happiness is not something that happens to you. It is something your brain builds. And right now, yours might be building the wrong thing. In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you exactly how your brain constructs happiness, or destroys it, at a neurological level. And more importantly, I'm going to give you a three-part system, backed by decades of neuroscience research, that you can start using this week to physically rewire how your brain processes your own life. This is not motivation. This is not mindset fluff. This is biology. And biology can be changed. There has never been a time in human history when people had more access to comfort, information, entertainment, and opportunity, and yet global rates of anxiety, depression, and reported unhappiness are at historical highs. The World Health Organization now lists depression as the leading cause of disability worldwide. Not war, not poverty, depression. Something is deeply broken in the way we've been taught to think about happiness. And I think I know what it is. We've been treating happiness like weather. Something that arrives, something that lifts, something we wait for, but what if that entire frame is wrong? Here's the truth that neuroscience has been building toward for 40 years of research. Happiness is a skill, not a feeling. It is a trainable capacity of the brain, not a personality trait, not luck, not circumstance. A skill exactly like learning to read or play an instrument or build a business. And like any skill, it responds to deliberate practice. Psychologist Sonia Lyubomirsky at UC Riverside spent 2 decades studying this. Her conclusion? Only 10% of your happiness is determined by your life circumstances. 10%. The other 90% is determined by internal variables. Your thinking patterns, your practices, your neurological habits. You've been redecorating the house to feel better. The real work is rewiring the electricity. I call it the HAP Protocol. 3 words, 3 pillars, each one rooted in a different branch of neuroscience. H, hardwire, understanding and deliberately reshaping your brain's default negativity bias. A, anchor, hacking your 4 core neurochemicals, the biological machinery of how happiness is actually produced. P, practice, building the daily behavioral architecture that makes the first 2 permanent. One pillar without the others is incomplete. All 3 together form a system that compounds over time. Let's go. Pillar 1, hardwire, the negativity bias. First, let me introduce you to the enemy. Your brain has a built-in negativity bias. Neuroscientist Rick Hansen at UC Berkeley describes it this way. Your brain is like Velcro for negative experiences and Teflon for positive ones. Negative events are encoded more deeply, processed more thoroughly, and remembered more vividly than positive events of equal magnitude. Why? Because you are descended from every human who ever survived long enough to reproduce. And survival for most of human history meant paying obsessive attention to threats. The ancestors who ignored threats didn't survive, so your brain inherited a threat detection system optimized for a world that no longer exists. In 1936, a man named Douglas Corrigan filed a flight plan from New York to California. He took off and landed in Dublin, Ireland. He claimed he simply followed the wrong end of his compass. They called him Wrong Way Corrigan. History laughed. But here's the thing. His compass was pointing somewhere real. It was just pointing in the wrong direction. Your negativity bias is Corrigan's compass. It is pointing somewhere real, just exactly backwards from where you want to go. The question is not whether you have the compass. You do. The question is whether you know how to recalibrate it. The science, neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to physically restructure itself based on repeated experience, is one of the most robust findings in modern neuroscience. Neuroscientist Donald Hebb summarized it in 1949 in what became known as Hebb's rule. Neurons that fire together, wire together. Every thought you repeat, every emotion you rehearse, every story you tell yourself, you are literally building a physical structure in your brain. 99% of people let that structure build itself by default. The 1% build it deliberately. Every evening, on 5 minutes only one, write down 3 specific good things that happened that day. Not big things, specific things. Not, I'm grateful for my family. Try. My daughter laughed at something I said at dinner, and it made me feel like I was doing something right. Martin Seligman at the University of Pennsylvania ran this exact exercise in a randomized controlled trial. 6 months later, participants who did this daily showed measurable increases in happiness and decreases in depressive symptoms. Results that persisted long after the exercise ended. You are not journaling. You are doing targeted neurological construction. You are training the brain to scan for positive signal in the same way it was born to scan for threat. Pillar 2, anchor the four neurochemicals. Your brain runs on four key neurochemicals relevant to happiness. Most people have heard their names. Almost nobody understands how to actually use them. Let me walk you through each one. Dopamine, the anticipation molecule. Dopamine is not released when you achieve something. It is released in anticipation of achievement. It is the fuel of forward motion. This is why crossing something off your to-do list feels better than staring at a blank calendar. The tool, break your goals into micro milestones. Not just write the chapter. Write 500 words before 10 a.m. Each milestone is a dopamine hit. You are engineering your own fuel system. Serotonin, the significance molecule. Serotonin rises when you feel valued, respected, and purposeful. It falls when you feel invisible or insignificant. This is why status anxiety is so physically painful. It is a genuine neurochemical withdrawal. The tool, contribute publicly, teach something, help someone visibly, volunteer, mentor. Any act where your value is seen and received by another person triggers a serotonin release that no purchase can replicate. Oxytocin, the trust molecule. Oxytocin is released through physical touch, eye contact, and acts of trust. Dr. Paul Zak at Claremont Graduate University found that oxytocin levels directly predict generosity, empathy, and reported life satisfaction. The tool, 8 hugs a day. Family therapist Virginia Satir was specific about this number. Not a greeting hug, a full held 6-second hug. That's the minimum duration for oxytocin release. The people who feel most loved are not the people with the most relationships. They are the people who invest most deeply in a few. Endorphins, the resilience molecule. Endorphins are released through physical exertion and laughter. They are your brain's internal painkiller. They are why a hard run at 6 a.m. makes the rest of the day feel more manageable, not because the problems got smaller, but because your chemistry shifted. The tool. Move your body every day, even briefly, and watch something genuinely funny. Not ironic funny, not cynical funny. Genuinely stupidly funny. Your brain does not distinguish between real laughter and earned laughter. Both release endorphins. Happiness is a skill, not a feeling. 99% of people wait for these chemicals to arrive. The 1% build the conditions that produce them. I want to ask you something. When was the last time you felt genuinely happy? Not grateful, not content, actually happy. Pillar 3, practice. Behavioral design. Here's the gap between knowing and changing. You can understand neuroplasticity perfectly. You can memorize the 4 chemicals. And still, on Monday morning, you will do exactly what you did last Monday morning. Because knowledge is not a system, and only systems survive the friction of real life. B.J. Fogg at Stanford has spent 20 years studying behavioral change. His conclusion? Motivation is unreliable. Environment is everything. The most successful behavior changes are not powered by willpower. They are triggered by design. In 2012, British cycling was mediocre, consistently mediocre for almost 100 years. Then Dave Brailsford became performance director and introduced a philosophy he called the aggregation of marginal gains. His team redesigned everything: the pillows the cyclists slept on, the temperature of the team bus, the angle of the seat. Not one dramatic change, 100 tiny ones. Within 4 years, Britain won 70% of the gold medals available in cycling at the 2012 Olympics. Your happiness practice is the same. You don't need a dramatic transformation. You need a behavioral architecture that makes the right actions easier than the wrong ones. Morning anchor, 10 minutes before your phone. Before you check anything, before you open any app, sit for 10 minutes. Breathe. Write 1 sentence about what you're looking forward to today. 1 sentence. That's it. You are setting the neurological frame for the next 16 hours. The 2-minute transition ritual. Between major activities, work to family, meetings to meals, take 2 minutes to physically reset. Stand up, look out a window, take 5 slow breaths. This is not woo. This is your prefrontal cortex, the planning and reasoning part of your brain, coming back online after being crowded out by stress hormones. 2 minutes of reset prevents hours of emotional reactivity, the evening circuit breaker. Before sleep, identify one thing you'll do differently tomorrow. 1. Not a life plan, a single specific adjustment. This trains your brain to learn from each day rather than simply survive it. The weekly depth hour. Once a week, do something that requires your full attention and produces something you can point to. Cooking a meal, building something, writing something, playing music. Psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi spent decades studying flow, the state of deep engagement where time disappears and satisfaction peaks. Flow requires challenge matched to skill. You cannot scroll your way into flow. You have to earn it. The people who build this architecture don't feel more motivated. They feel less dependent on motivation because the system carries them when the feeling doesn't arrive. Here's what makes this hard. The negativity bias doesn't want to be rewired. It was built by millions of years of evolution, and it will resist. There will be days, many days, when the gratitude journal feels pointless, when the morning anchor feels like a performance, when none of this feels like it's working. Those are not signs that the system is broken. Those are the days the system matters most. Every day you practice on a hard day is worth 10 days of practice on an easy one. Because you are not just training happiness, you are training resilience, the capacity to continue building when you don't feel like building. Your future self is being constructed right now, today, by the choices your present self makes when it's uncomfortable. This week, specific, start here. Tonight, 3 specific good things. Write them down, 5 minutes, phone off. Tomorrow morning, 10 minutes before you touch your phone, sit, breathe. 1 sentence about what you're looking forward to. This week, 1 6-second hug per day with someone you love. Count the seconds. It feels ridiculous. Do it anyway. Friday, schedule a flow activity for the weekend, something that requires your hands and your brain simultaneously. 1 hour minimum. 1 week of this will not transform you. It will, however, show you that you have more agency over your own neurology than you currently believe. And that belief, that evidence, is where everything else begins. This is educational content, not clinical advice. If you're experiencing persistent depression or anxiety, please speak with a qualified mental health professional. I'm going to be honest with you about why I made this video. I spent years performing contentment. I had the right answers when people asked how I was doing. I had the right appearance of things going well. And underneath that, I had this quiet, persistent sense that I was missing something, that other people had access to something I didn't. What I didn't know is that I was waiting for happiness to arrive. I thought it was something that happened to you if your life was arranged correctly. Nobody had told me it was a practice. Nobody had told me the neuroscience existed. Nobody had told me that I could build it. I'm telling you now, because I think some of you are in the same place I was, and I don't want you to wait as long as I did. There is an old philosophical insight, reformulated by modern psychologists, that compresses everything we've covered into one equation. Your happiness is not determined by what you have. It is determined by the ratio between what you have and what you want. Change the numerator, build more, or change the denominator, want differently. The HAP protocol works on both. You cannot control your circumstances. You cannot guarantee outcomes. You cannot protect yourself from loss or failure or grief. But you can control what your brain practices. You can control what you build. Happiness is a skill, not a feeling. And you have never been closer to starting than you are right now. Build something worth living. Tell me in the comments which pillar you struggle with most. Hardwire, anchor, or practice. I want to know where people get stuck, because that's where the next video is going. And if this shifted something for you, even slightly, subscribe.